welcome to part 5 of Yoga Tips for the Digestion. If you've been following this series with me, I hope you found some tips that have been useful for you. I'm sharing techniques that may seem quite obvious, but as I said in the very first video, they may seem like things you already know, but are you actually doing them? So these are habits and techniques and tips that I have found helpful in my own life and that I use with clients, and that through my experience of many different types of modalities, I have found to be the most effective baseline techniques. So before we go any further with looking into pathology in the body, which is what you automatically suspect when there's something amiss, why not just try and look at some of the most basic habits that we do every day and get those right first, and that might clear it up. And if it doesn't, then you know that you need to look a little bit further. So just to go over the tips that we've covered really briefly, just the main areas. So the first video, I talked about calming the nervous system, because coming to a calm place before we eat ensures that our body is ready to receive the food and can digest it well. And then we went on to look at the Agni, the digestive fire, and how we can light up this fire in the belly to help us digest and absorb and assimilate our food even more efficiently and turn it into energy and get rid of the waste products. Then we went on to talk about eating right for your constitution, and I emphasized how you can tune into what your unique body needs rather than slavishly following a system, so that you can provide it with the right kind of foods for the unique individual that you are. Then the last video, we looked at activating the deep inner core muscles, the muscles that surround the digestive organs and that help to facilitate that, the tone and the flow of fluids and prana and the contraction and relaxation that we need to move the food through our system. So today, what I want to finish up with really is talking about the importance of a consistent routine. So I know you might already be going, oh, many people shy away from the idea of a routine, and I know that I have definitely in my life. It seems rigid and boring, and we also think, I'm never going to be able to do the same thing every day because my life is so unpredictable. And here is the point, really. Unpredictability is stressful for both the nervous system and for the digestion. So just a quick test. How many, count this on your fingers, how many of these do you do? Skip meals, eat on the go, say in the car or something, or just as you're rushing around. Graze throughout the day rather than have set meal times. Eat in a hurry. Eat while you're distracted on the phone, TV, computer. Eat out more than once a week. Get takeaway in more than once a week. Eat when you're not hungry. Eat late at night. Eat too much. Eat too little. So count how many of those you could say yes to. And if you got more than 4 or 5, you might be wise to think about cultivating a more consistent routine around eating. So I know that you have a busy life. We all have busy lives, and it might be really hard to stick to the same routine every day. So it doesn't have to be absolutely rigid, but our digestion and in fact our general health definitely does better when our habits are regular and consistent. So if it's possible, it's good to find some anchors in your life, daily practices that become like second nature habits that you know are good for you, but that you love, and they become like familiar and trusted friends, things you can rely on that you know you're going to do every day because it's just so important to you. So these kind of routines aren't applied from the outside. You're generating them from within, so it's something you want to do, and it provides a structure for your life, and that can really help reduce your stress levels, improve your sleep, improve your digestion, and lead to overall better health. There's plenty of research out there that shows this now. So ultimately, what I'm strongly saying is that the best routine for you is the one that you created for yourself. And you'll get lots of ideas. You know, you only have to just Google for 1 minute to find all these different ideas. 7 habits of highly effective people, 5 ways to deal with anxiety, 10 time management tips for parents. And, you know, there's just so much. You can't do it all. So you might look at these things or listen to other people's suggestions. You might road test a couple of habits for a while, but most of them fall away, right? It might be a stretch to remember to do it every day. But sometimes one practice will resonate. And even though you maybe have to push yourself to do it every day in the first place, you'll know that you're feeling so good about doing this, and it starts to become so meaningful for you that you'll want to keep it. So let's talk a little bit about what yoga can help us understand about routines that directly improve our digestion. So I'm going to offer you some tips that arise from Ayurveda, but they've been, you know, sort of, I have adapted them for my use with myself and with clients. So it's not strictly Ayurvedic, but it's definitely coming from that tradition. So you can listen to these tips. There's quite a few of them, and you might choose 1 or 2 to road test in your life. And as I said earlier, some will stick, others will fall away. And you never know, something you might come back to later on, a few months down the track, a few years down the track. There's plenty of things that have been like that with me in my life. So let's start with first thing in the morning when you get up. Ayurveda recommends that you scrape your tongue with a metal tongue scraper. Have you ever noticed that you get a white coating on your tongue? And this is often thicker and whiter when your gut health is out of balance, and also when you're sick as well. So this white coating is armor, the sludge of undigested food that builds up in the system and can lead to disease. I talked about that in a previous video. So we're getting rid of at least some of that that's come up during the night. Then you can brush your teeth, and if you like, you can try some other Ayurvedic practices of massaging your gums with a little bit of salt mixed in with sesame oil or coconut oil, or oil pulling, where you actually sloosh around with a mouthful of sesame or coconut oil for 5 or 10 minutes, and then spit it out, not down the sink, because that's going to cause issues with your plumbing in the bin or the compost. So again, both of those techniques, well, the gums one really strengthening the gums, and the oil pulling really helping to pull more toxins out of the body, more armor out of the body. Then you can drink a large cup of warm water to rehydrate after the long night, and this will help to kickstart your digestion and promote a good elimination habit. So then it's a really good time to do some meditation, some breathing practices, and some yoga or some other movement practice. It doesn't have to be long if you don't have much time. The practice that I taught you in the last video, very short. You could do that in definitely less than 10 minutes. And when I work with clients to develop a personal yoga practice for them, we're always looking at something that's easy for them to integrate into their lives. And it's usually around 10 to 15 minutes a day, sometimes only 5. Of course, if people want more, then they can do that. But honestly, most people can't manage much more than that on a regular day-to-day basis. And it's much better to do a little bit every day than a lot once or twice a week. Because, as I said before, the benefits of a routine are really huge. And even if it's only one small thing that you do every day, it becomes an anchor. And that becomes an anchor on which you can build other good habits. So that practice we did yesterday with the breath meditation at the beginning. Then we did cat pose, and you could do a couple of other stretches if you have a bit more time. And finishing with that Agnisar Kriya to really stoke up the digestive fire and energize you for your day. So after all that, if you suffer from constipation, drinking that warm water and following up with those breathing techniques and a bit of movement should really get you going if the water wasn't enough. And quite often the digestion is sluggish simply because we're not moving around enough during the day. So as well as your morning routine, you might want to try and get in a daily walk or have a bit of a dance around the house, and 2-3 times a week, find something you love doing, like going to the gym, going to a yoga class, a Tai Chi class, a dance class, Pilates, whatever it is you like to do, but something regular that you know that you can rely on, it's going to be good for you. So those things aren't strictly about eating, but they're really important for the digestion. So what does Ayurveda have to say about eating itself? Remember, Ayurveda comes from a long-established tradition and a lifestyle that's quite different from what we in the West have today in the modern world, and what most people in India have today in the modern world as well. So it's not always possible to follow the suggestions exactly. So you just listen to them and you can modify them as they fit into your own life. So firstly, to try and eat our meals at roughly the same time every day. The body gets used to this, and then it learns to be hungry at the right time, rather than sort of flitting about, waiting till you're starving, letting your blood sugar get all crazy and then stuffing your face with whatever is handy. Or alternatively, just eating because you're not hungry because this is the only time you have. But if you find the meal patterns that work for you, that leave a sufficient gap between them so that you are hungry for the next meal, then that's the best thing. And do really try and eat only when you're hungry. I know that's hard if you've perhaps only got a half-hour lunch break from work, but you will be hungry if you haven't eaten since breakfast, or maybe if you haven't had breakfast if you're doing intermittent fasting. Ayurveda also really places a lot of importance around the midday meal, because during the midday hours between 10 and 2, that's when our pitta, our fire element, is strongest in our body. So that is the best time for us to digest food. And they suggest that you try and make your main meal at midday. So that's not always possible for people. But what you could do is make a main meal in the evening and just eat a little bit of it and have the leftovers of that for the next day, which is like a more substantial meal. And then perhaps once you get into that routine, you could have just a lighter supper in the evening, a soup or a salad or a sandwich or something. Ayurveda does say it's not a good idea to eat leftovers, but that is often really not realistic in our lives. So I don't really advise people to do that one unless they're really, really keen, because that is tricky. And if you want to make food ahead, if you're taking it to work, then you really need to do that. It's much better than buying something out, is to make your own food and take it with you. So the other things you can do is give gratitude before you eat. So we talked about that in the first video, calming the nervous system, how it's really important to let the nervous system settle down. And a good way of doing this is breathing and generating a feeling of gratitude within you. You don't have to say anything out loud. You don't have to close your eyes. You can just start to feel grateful for the food, for your day, for anything in your life, and that will just calm the nervous system, take you into that parasympathetic nervous system and get your body ready to receive and digest the food. So I said earlier about leaving a decent gap between meals. So Ayurveda suggests eating at least 4 hours apart and not to snack in between. Again, for some people, that's not always the best idea. So if your blood sugar can get a little bit low, I do recommend that you have a small, healthy protein snack, perhaps a handful of nuts, or perhaps a piece of fruit or something between meals. So to finish, towards the end of the day, again, if you've had your main meal at lunchtime, to have a lighter dinner in the evening, which is easy for you to digest, and leave a gap of 2 to 3, preferably 3 hours before you go to bed. And if you can, do a small amount of movement after dinner. So perhaps a short walk up and down the street, even 100, 200 meters is fine, just to help yourself digest that food. So that is a few tips that I have to share with you. I mean, there are so many more, and I have a lot of personal habits that I do most days. For example, I love to make my own nut and seed milks, and that's really become part of my routine. If I can, I like to sprout seeds so that I've got fresh sprouts to eat. I always make all of my food myself from scratch, from fresh, preferably seasonal and local ingredients, and many more things, but I'll share more about those things in future videos. Thank you so much for joining me in this series, and do let me know in the comments or in a personal message if you've got any questions or any feedback on the series or anything you'd like to see in the future. So thanks very much and have a wonderful day. Bye.